Hello, welcome to Fig Tree Christian. I'm Pastor Melissa, and I'm so glad that you are here today. Today, we're going to talk a little bit more about Lent. In case you were not here last week or haven't been following for the past 14 years, quite a long time, let me tell you a little bit about it. Lent is the 40 days minus Sundays leading up to Easter. It is a time for reflection, to let go of something that might keep you from Christ or take on something that might bring you closer to Christ. It used to be, I thought it was all about giving up, but I think that taking on also has its benefits and it's something we should do. It's a time to reflect on the phrase ashes to ashes and dust to dust. From ashes we are born, and from dust we will return. It is a dark time in the Christian year as we are experiencing the death and loss of Jesus Christ. Notice I did not say resurrection. I talked about that last week. Lent is not about the resurrection of Jesus Christ. It is only about the death of Jesus Christ and what that meant for the disciples and for us in today's world. It's only Easter that we talk about the resurrection, and that is an exciting time, but Lent is not. So we do not bring Easter into this time. I want to talk specifically about how ministers deal with Lent and how they deal with Lent online. Now, you might notice that the title of this, or at least in the comments, it says what ministers get wrong, and I absolutely believe that this is true. So from the inception of Fig Tree Christian, back when I still thought it was going to be a physical presence, but somehow is not, I think that's okay. I think I handle myself well on camera. I think that I can communicate well with you, and maybe this will flourish in some way in another 14 years. Who knows? But anyway, I've noticed for many, many years that when Lent comes, my minister friends get on Facebook, they all have Facebook, and they say, I'm leaving for Lent. I will see you at Easter. It kind of reminds me of a Muppet Christmas Carol, and I know that sounds really crazy, but I've used it in Lent before. If you go to figtreechristian.org and you search through my Lent posts, you will see that I have Gonzo there, and it is when the third ghost shows up. And they express that it is too scary for them. Peace until the end. And they sure do. They wait till it's the happy ending and they show up again. I feel like ministers have the exact same thing where they give up the internet at the time when the internet needs it most. Now, I think that there are a few things that we need to talk about in relation to that. And I've made a handy dandy note so that I make sure to say them all, because sometimes I get a little on a tangent and I miss something. And then when it's done, I think, oh man, that wasn't great. I should have said this. And so now I'm prepared. I am very prepared for today. That's one of the things about doing this live, is that it can go in many different directions, sometimes for the better, sometimes missing out on a few things. I think ministers leading, see, that also is a thing. I think ministers leaving the internet during Lent, they do it because it is low-hanging fruit. As in, for them, when they leave the internet, it's because they really don't have a connection to the internet. I will note, and I think that this is actually a bad thing for them. I don't think that they're doing it to communicate with people or connect with their own. I feel like it's because of the nature of the internet now. I have seen the post less this year. I have seen fewer ministers get online and announce that they're gone for the Lenten season. And maybe that's just because they chose not to, let their left hand know what their right hand is saying. Or maybe it's because they're still here. They're still online. But I think that it's low-hanging fruit for the most part. They know they need to give something up for Lent. And they're not going to give up chocolate maybe because they don't eat it, or they're not going to give up caffeine because they need it. They're going to give up something that is not going to hurt very much. And for them, that might be the internet. And so they say they're giving up the internet and they stay offline for the 40 days, maybe also including Sundays. I don't know. So it's low-hanging fruit. And I don't think that as a shepherd, I don't think that is a good example. I think that Lent should change you somehow. I gave up sugary drinks one year during Lent, and for the most part, I still don't I still don't drink them. Like I'll have them every once in a while when it's after 4 and the choice is between a sugary drink or a caffeinated drink, because I also don't have caffeine after 4. And that's something else that I had given up during Lent. So in both of those cases, I am better for it. I am healthier for it. I am closer to Christ for it in my own way. I think that ministers giving up the internet is something that they can do passively while they're trying to work through all the things they have to do during this time of year. This is a busy season for ministers. Christmas and Advent and Lent and Easter are very busy seasons that are just totally take over our brains, and we just cannot think of ourselves a lot. So we tend to do things that are superficial sometimes when we get into those really intense periods. But I also don't think it's a good example. I don't think giving up the internet because it's easy is something that we should emulate or do. So I am against that in that respect. Second, it's a sign that they don't understand where God's community is living. Now, 12 years ago, so a dozen years ago, a baker's dozen years ago, I remember that it frustrated me deeply when the ministers would leave the internet, because what I noticed were Christians who had a relationship to the church but had left the church were using Lent as a way to try to understand where they were in God's kingdom. And a lot of churches were throwing out just come to our church is fine, not realizing that no, their church wasn't fine either. Some of the pitfalls that they had fallen into that made them leave the general church was also at their church. And they were asking questions on Reddit, and they needed answers from more than just an armchair Christian, which is also another reason why AI is bad when it comes to Christianity, because I believe that not the plurality of answers that come from OpenAI come from Reddit and then come from Wikipedia. And as someone who was a moderator of Our Christianity, the answers on Our Christianity are often and almost always terrible. I remember I used to go there daily and post my answer as an ordained minister who has a very expensive degree from a very prestigious seminary. And my answer was downvoted to oblivion, which means that my answers aren't the ones that are getting shared by OpenAI. It's these armchair theologians that don't know anything that are getting upvoted and getting shared on OpenAI. So I just think that during this time of year, when Christians are really struggling to understand what it means to live in the dark parts of Christianity, that being available to answer those questions, to dig into places that those questions would be asked, is maybe a better thing to do for Lent than giving up the internet. In fact, I would encourage, although your mental health definitely needs to be considered when you're doing this. I'm saying this because Reddit is a hive of villainy. I can't even say words today. And there are a lot of really despicable things that are said there, but there's a lot of lost sheep as well. And I've always thought that real theologians who can really say what needs to be said should be on there more often, answering those questions. I don't know, maybe helping OpenAI some get the right answers. So when people just ask the AI what is the answer to this theological query, they get a right answer. I think Ellis, I can't remember her name. See, I'm on a tangent already. I'm only on B. Lindsay Ellis. She did this whole post about Christianity, and I knew she used AI because I was hearing those Our Christianity answers coming from her mouth, and they were so wrong, and it made me so angry that I literally did not finish the video because I could tell that she was not asking an actual minister, and that upset me. But during Lent, ministers should be online to meet the needs of the people who are asking the questions. The absolute worst time to leave the internet is in the dark moments when people need light. Okay, next. Oh, 2 examples. So I don't know if you know the name Fanny Crosby, but Fanny Crosby is a missionary who wrote Christian music. One of the songs that you might be aware of, if you're even slightly related to the church, is Blessed Assurance. Blessed assurance, Jesus is mine. Oh, what a foretaste of glory divine. That's Fanny Crosby. And Fanny Crosby also met the people where they were. While she did not go to bars to drink or imbibe or anything that would be considered less than Christian, especially in the 1800s, she did sit and talk with the people there. She didn't tell them they were wrong. She didn't go there to preach how they were all going to hell. She just went there to be with them and to communicate with them. And when the situation was ripe, she shared the word of God. She lived in the poor areas. She lived in the lower income bracket. And she communicated with those people and knew those people. She was in the space where the people were. Unlike ministers today, there are exceptions. Then the other one I wanted to mention, and for a brief moment, I forgot her name upstairs, and I was like, I don't remember her name. And then I said Tammy Faye Baker, and my husband kind of laughed a little, like, what are you going to be talking about, Tammy Faye Baker? Tammy Faye Baker was the wife of, maybe it would have been better if Reverend Baker, I can't remember his first name. He was a mega minister. He was a televangelist, and he started his own theme park, and he was scum. I think he was an adulterer, if I remember correctly, and he also funneled cash. He was bad. He was bad business, and she went down with him, and it was big talk when it happened, very big talk. But somehow she accepted a place on the show Celeb Reality House, which was a VH1 show back when those mashups of putting people together in a house and seeing how it turns out was a thing. So it was all B-list celebrities, some C-list celebrities living in a house, and we got to watch the fallout of it. And I'm sure they put Tammy Faye Baker in that house because they wanted the drama. They wanted her to be a preacher and to really make them angry, and there'd be some real fights, and we would see how bad Tammy Faye Baker was. But that is not what happened, to the shock of all the viewers too, including myself. Like, I had my own preconceptions about Tammy Faye Baker because I heard the stories and I thought that she was complicit in it, and I didn't realize that she was a hurt, wounded woman who was coming out of that situation, and she was the victim in it. Now, she still had, if you ever seen Tammy Faye Baker, she was a lover of mascara. So she still had this like blaring mascara on her eyelids, and it was just like, I swear, you probably could clean ice off of a window with how thick the mascara was. And there would be times in the show that she would cry and they would be black, because while mascara doesn't run today, it most definitely did then. And she would, it became a thing where you would see the black lines underneath her eyes from her mascara running when she cried. She did cry in the show. But one thing that she also did is she loved. She loved deeply, and she loved people who did not at the beginning love her back. And in doing that, it changed them. It changed them and made them more open to be a loving individual. It was amazing to watch, and it's something I still think about even to this day, obviously, because I'm sharing it with you. She met people where they are, not in condemnation and hate, because that would not have changed anything, but in Christian love. And in doing so, showed what Christian love really is. Those are two excellent examples of how, as ministers, we are called to go into the darkness and shine a light. That's what we're supposed to be doing. And the fact that ministers get off during Lent is a sign that they don't understand that. Third, they leave at the time in the Christian year the community needs the most. I actually went ahead of myself on that. That is exactly why we need to be online. I'm sorry, you're a minister, then you need to be reaching God's people. Now, I understand something that a lot of people on the outside don't understand. One is that ministers are leashed by their paycheck. And I say that as bluntly as I possibly can. Ministers have families, ministers have houses, they have bills, they have everything. And congregations threaten their livelihood, their very existence with money. And it works. So it causes ministers to be far more insular, as in the people who are already in the church, and care about them, than it is to think, how do we reach those within our community? So when the answer is you need to be more online, a lot of these older congregations are going to puff up a little bit because they're not online. Because anyone who's older than me has a strong possibility that they're not really online. They're anyone, I guess older than me is not the answer. 20 or so years older than me are probably not going to be spending that much time online and don't get how leashed the community is to the internet and how important it is that is a field in which ministers need to just sit and listen. I'm going to be preaching on peace in a few months, and one of the things I'm going to be talking about is lament and how God allows us the space to speak our truth. Even if the words we're speaking is not true, the meaning behind them are, and we need to be present for that. Ministers need to be present for that. Now, you might be thinking, as not an ordained minister, what can I do? You just spent the whole time talking about ministers. Where am I in this conversation? About 4 or 5 years ago, this phrase came to me, and I've written it down a few times, and now it's memorized, and it means a lot to me because it speaks so much truth, and it is: the fate of humanity is held in the hands of the selfish. In other words, when we want a certain action to happen, whether it's right and just or whether it's not, we are more likely to grasp it and keep a hold of it if the outcome benefits us, or grasp it and hold it if changing it is against us. It is the selfish who keep real change from taking root. So in a lot of ways, If you are not a minister listening to this, you have the power to unleash that minister. You have the power to help change come about, to help us see beyond our four walls, our four brick walls of church, to see the need of those outside those walls. We all are actors in this play, and we all have a part to play. So I guess what I'm asking from you, if you are not a minister, is to be present and to be aware of when you're grasping something that needs to change and when you need to let go of that thing that needs to change, and trust in God. The fate of humanity is held in the hands of the selfish. The future of humanity is let go. As always, I know it's a lot, it's deep. It's Lent! Lent is dark. Lent is something that we have to struggle with. But I will see you again next week. And as always, go in peace.